Conesy? Are you awake?
I think I will be after Board Games and Coffee.
Ah, okay. You just haven't had the first cup yet.
No, I haven't. Just making me do this recording thing first. But it's for you, so let's roll into today's Board Games and Coffee. Welcome to WiscoDice! Hey yo folks, I am your host, the Conesy with Most, and I'm joined today by...
Hey, I'm Suzanne.
And today on Board Games and Coffee, we're going to chat a little bit about how we approach teaching board games.
Yes, teaching games is something we both actually really enjoy doing. But before we get into that, we want all of you to smash that like button and also subscribe if you haven't already so you get notified of all our upcoming content.
Hey, all right, we got it that time. Woot! All right, how do you approach teaching board games?
Well, I approach teaching board games by making sure I'm awake first. You look like you're pretty tired today, but we have some Stampede from just coffee.
Stampede?
Yep,
Yeah, it's gonna stampede. It's gonna stampede us right through the show.
Yep. But for my approach to teaching board games is I try my best to have read through all of the rules ahead of time and be the one to actually set up the game. So that if I've never played this game before, that I am touching all the components, know what things are, so that I can explain it. That's the initial preparation.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how you approach it. So, like, when we both tackle a new game for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. That's typically how you're learning it yourself, is you're the one oftentimes that is punching it and setting it up and here's the rules, whether it's in English or some foreign language. Yeah, French.
I'm getting better at other languages, but...
And then I usually go watch a YouTube video. So that's kind of how we learn the game, right?
Yep.
And so that gives you a lot of confidence because you've had that tactile touch. I'm more of a visual learner, so I learn oftentimes from videos.
And I need to do and read. So I guess the first step really is learn the game. You don't have to be completely perfect at everything, but learn the basics of the game so you can... I guess it sort of depends on the play rate a little bit, but I like to explain the different things that we see on the board.
Okay.
So you're going to go through and these are the different... If it's like a worker placement game, what are the different places you can place a worker and the actions that you're going to take?
Sure. So I tend to take a little bit different tact when I start the teach. So I like to give just a little bit, especially if there's any kind of theme to the game, give a little bit of a fluff point on what the theme of the game is, so people can be like, okay, this is what the game's going to try to do. This is what it's trying to emulate. Hey, are you trying to escape a haunted mansion, or are you trying to have the best economy, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to get better at that. I'm not great at the theme, because the theme's not as important to me, because, hey, if you listen to the podcast, I'll play it if it's a game.
Yeah, that's right up there. By the way, that podcast episode I recommend everybody listens to. Dice is Right game, and I think it was so much fun. It was great. So, anyways,
go back to this.
I also, back on topic, it's Board Games and Coffee. We're never on topic. The other thing I try to do is after the fluff, I explain how to win. Just the high level. Is it points? I mean, at this point, I'm getting famously known for my points bad joke.
Yeah, which we don't need to repeat.
Well, I totally repeat it. It's a totally good joke, and people chuckle about it. Like, I don't know where they designed this game, and they came up with this concept called points, but it's absolutely brilliant. My mind was blown. And, oh, by the way, that's probably not my last bad joke while we teach this game or while we shoot this video. So, yeah, that's kind of what I do to kind of break out
to all of you out there that if you have a better bad joke that he can use, send it our way.
Just comments right down below. But anything like that, though, it's a kind of an icebreaker. It breaks attention and gets people into that instead of like, hey, I'm going to pay attention because somebody's going to talk to me for the next 20 minutes. They're now they're in that mode of having fun too. So it kind of helps set the tone for the table. So, hey, this is going to be a loose, fun experience. I'm going to be excited for it. Helps you get excited. Hey, I got that theme. I know how to win. And by the way, the host is setting that tone of things are going to be light and fun.
Yes. Well,
even if it's a super crunchy game, doesn't matter.
So after like the intro, either Conesy's intro or mine, which is more of like an overview of the playing space and player boards if you have them, I like to walk through what a turn structure looks like. Sometimes it's more involved than others, but what are you going to do on your turn? Here are the steps. The player usually, hopefully, will follow along.
Not all player aids are created equally.
With that. And then, so we go through this is what the turn sequence is. This is how you notify the rest of the table that you are done with your turn, too. Which sounds really, like, strict, but it's not. Because, it's like you're always sitting there and you're, like, waiting to figure out if that person's done. Or if you're like me, you just jump the gun and start taking your turn accidentally.
Well, it doesn't matter anyways. You'll just start taking your turn. Once you've got it figured out what you're going to do, whoop, you're like, hey, that's my turn.
Right. So if you're ever playing
even
with
if
me,
it isn't,
tell me to just stop. No big deal.
But I do actually go into that next as well. Typically, when I'm teaching a game, is what's the high-level round structure. I'm less telling people what to do about what their player board and their game mechanics are, because I'm coming off that joke, everything's light. Now I'm going to give you that. I'm still very high-level, like conceptual. What is this game going to try to do? What's the round structure? Is it going to be do your turn, or is it simultaneous action, or is it is it take turns clockwise? Is there a board somewhere that tracks player order for throughout the round? Whatever that next, however that kind of high level, what does a round look like? And then my next step then after that is, okay, now let's start playing with those components. Let's start pointing out where things are. A lot of times when we're running and playing games, we have the game already set up for someone, whether that's at our board game nights here that we run, or at a convention. The game's already set up for them. So, but it can be really good if during a teach or an explanation of the game, if you're handing players components, because you have players like Suzanne who want and need that tactile experience of understanding what all of these components are. A game like Terra Mystica or Age of Innovation, it doesn't matter. I can't have it fully set up because part of the gameplay experience is selecting your faction. And then once you get it, then you get your player color and all of your stuff and your player order and stuff like that. So I can go through all of these high-level conceptuals, but then it's going to be part of, okay, this token is this, and it goes here. This token is this, and it goes here. So anytime you can use and incorporate setup, don't go overboard. Just like the player setup, individual player setup can be part of that player. You as the host, get the main game board set up. You can explain things as you're setting up the main game board, because you can always come back and do your own play area, or you can use your player area as kind of the way you're explaining the player area to the other players who are going to do setup. But anytime you can get the players tactically touching things, it helps them understand what it is they have in front of them.
And even if it's not asymmetrical player setup, like, so you can set up everyone's player board ahead of time if they can pick the pieces up. Like Windmill Valley is a good one I just taught. So you pick up, okay, you got the windmills on the side. Now if you get all three of these, you pick them up and you can see that this is what you're now scoring. Type of thing.
Yeah.
So, even if it's set up, having them be able to manipulate or flip cards or something, so they're also touching it. Because one of the things with teaching the game is you have to understand all the different learning styles that could be present at the table with you and incorporate that into the gameplay. There may be someone who needs to read the rules, and if they weren't able to do it ahead of time, you may need to just hand them the rule book at some point.
And that's where, please, board gaming publishers and manufacturers, please include effective player aids. But this is like that for that type of player and that type of learning style, giving them an effective player aid.
Yeah.
Like they can follow along, and especially this is going to be the next step actually that I use is because I actually leverage the player aid as part of my teach. And so if you think about visual learners, if you think about the tactile learners that need to touch things and manipulate things, so we kind of addressed those learners. We've addressed the visual, like, just looking, like that's pretty easy. It's just you're looking at things and paying attention to them. You're audible because you're verbally explaining things to them. But then you need, like for those people that need to kind of read along, And there are a lot of people, I tend to find that I also actually do better if I'm kind of reading along while somebody is explaining a game, so I can reference this and go, okay, this is where it goes in the back of my head as to how this works. I'm a very kind of, while I may be a very visual learner, if I also have that, it really helps me reinforce the game. So having a good player aid that I can walk through, okay, now I'm going to explain the player actions and go into deep dive on what everything is you can do. And we're gonna follow along on this player aid because the player aid in this game tells you everything you need to know. Or if it doesn't, and I'm running it, say, at a convention or something like that, I may go over to Board Game Geek or other sources, or I haven't had to actually do this yet, but worst case scenario, I will create my own player aid that I can use as part of the teaching experience, because it's so necessary for you to nail all of those 3 different learning styles.
Yep.
Because then I don't have to hand them a rule book. I don't have to wait for them to read the rules. I can just
It's a little bit more formal being like if you're going to prepare something else. Like a lot of times I'm not going to do it for every single game that we have. I'll use what they have, and if it's a more casual game, I will say
certainly the layer of complexity makes a difference here, right? If you're teaching a Lacerda game, you darn well better have a great player aid to help people consume and understand that, versus if you're teaching if you're teaching Azul One Night Werewolf
or One Night Werewolf, you don't need
a big player aid,
like
right?
The player aid can be on like the board sometimes too.
It was the Dawn of Ulos. I don't need, I was teaching Dawn of Ulos at Strong Tower Gaming Convention. Link up there for the post-con report. But you can, during that one, I would, the player aid is on the actual player cards, the individual player boards, but it doesn't go into extreme detail on, how do you place a base camp, or how do you conduct a war, or anything like that. The war kind of thing I wish was somewhere, but it's fine because it works. The game is so self-explanatory. And once players get going around, it's fine.
It's good. Yeah, I mean, in some player aids you can have, like we were saying, it can be a little bit more simplified, but also do not be afraid if a game has a multi-page player aid. Like an Age Contrived, we played that a few times. That has a 4-page player aid.
Yeah, review forthcoming.
Yes, and it's a great player aid. You can find what you need. They designed it very well, so at certain points in the game, you only have a certain page open. You're not scanning it and trying to figure out what you need.
But, the point is, leveraging a player aid during a teach is really good. Another thing that I tend to do, and this is something that, actually I should say, we do, although I'm the one that usually sends out the invites for board game nights, etc., is when I'm hosting a board game night, and I have our board game nights, and we haven't talked about this a lot. We'll do another board games and coffee in the future about how we organize board game days and board game nights. But when we host a board game night, we typically have 2 to 3 tables of games going at once, and on those tables we send out as part of the invite, hey, this week we are hoping to get game X, game Y, game Z on the table. And here are great tutorial videos that are hyperlinked in the email, and or I can link game rules, which I haven't really done, but I should start doing more.
They can find the game rules.
I'm assuming they can search for them, but just making it easier, making easy for your attendees. And what we found is...
If they want to. They don't all have to.
They don't have to, but what we find is a lot of them actually will watch some of the how to play videos, and then, which we should just record more of those how to play videos, but so they're watching our videos. But anyways, we send them that because they have an extra opportunity. They might come to the table then with extra questions, or they may come to the table and it helps streamline the teach because you don't have to go. It's more of a reminder system then when you're going through the teach. And of course, if there's, it almost always inevitably happens that 2 or 3 of the players watch the video while one player didn't. So that's fine. Well, you're teaching one player, but you're reminding everybody else how to play the game, which can be really helpful. And just in case you missed something, if somebody else paid attention to that video, they can kind of be like, hey, the video explained it this way. Are you sure it works that way? So it kind of helps you be correct. You know, when I'm trying to, like, a lot of times when we're playing a game on board game nights, it might be we've only played it once ourselves, and then we're like, hey, this game would be a good fit, I think, for our board game nights. Let's play it there where we can get more players.
Yeah. So one thing I will say that with having people watch the video or read the rules ahead of time, it does help with which game they want to choose for that night.
It does.
You know, so that cuts down the time, and we have a limited number of time because almost everyone's got to work the next day, or have kids that got to get somewhere. But the other thing, though, that I do find as a small downside to that, having people watch it ahead of time, is that some of them have their way that they would teach it, and they want to jump in, and so there is some. You need to either set ahead of time. You know, I'll pause for questions after each section, or wait till the end, or you just have to be ready to deal with it somehow, which is tough for me.
I think that's a really good transition into how do you deal with those types of common interruptions that can happen during a board game teach, because there are several common interruptions.
Yes.
And you know what? I think that's probably a great topic for another video. Because you know why? My cuppeth hath run dry.
Well, your cup may be dry, but there's one part of my board game teach we have not covered.
Okay.
And it is the most important. And the biggest difference between how Conesy and I teach the game, I think, is that after I've explained all this stuff, then I explain what all the end game trigger and the end game scoring.
So yes, and so if we're doing,
I do explain that. I want to make that clear.
I will say if we do a board game at the house where it's like a board game night or a board game day, I will cover that as part of the initial teach. But if I'm at a con where I'm the host, where I'm not really playing, well, not always. I control like how much time I have for the game, but like for I was teaching Dawn of Ulos and Strong Tower. I explained the fact that these tokens, these favor tokens, are going to be ultimately whoever has the most of them at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game, they're the winner, right? Boom, yay! Novel concept to collect the the awesome metal coins, but
or funny money depending on the game.
Or the funny money, if you're playing like say Rock Hard. What I did though is I don't explain all the end game scoring at the end. I'm like, we're gonna go. I'm like, okay, at this point you know enough to play the game. You may not know enough to how to win, but there's going to be a lot of time till we get there. And since I'm not playing in this game, I'm here to help facilitate your fun. And after you've gotten a kind of a couple of rounds around the table of taking actions, I'm going to come back where it's going to make a lot more sense for you, so that you're not asking me. You don't have to feel like you have to ask again and again and again, because that's what'll happen. Like inevitably, that's what's going to happen during a teach. If you explain all of the ways you can score end gaming at the beginning of a teach, which is, I think, really important, especially if you're like 4 friends at a table or 5 friends at a table playing like a game.
But then playing with
I guarantee about 2 rounds in or 3 rounds in, somebody's going to go, okay, so can you explain scoring again for me? Or how does scoring work in this game? Right. Like that question is inevitably going to come up regardless of whether you've taught it at the beginning of the teach or not. So at a convention where I'm not an active participant in the game, it's so easy to just say, okay, trust me. I want to make sure we get things going and you guys have an opportunity to get the whole game in this time allotment that we have for this game. But we're going to go through a couple of rounds of just doing things, and then I'll explain the end game scoring. So that you understand. Now you can have more context to what you're doing in the game, to how it is. And you have to be, when you do that, you have to be very aware of how the game plays and works, because what you don't want to do is like, oh, hey, it's a 4-round game and I didn't explain scoring until I played a full round. Well, that's not going to work, because now I've got 25% of the game done and people have made dire decisions that would have impacted their scoring potentially. But like in a game of Dawn of Ulos, where you're that first round is really about establishing base camps, and the second round you're finally starting to make some. You're starting to make some different decisions. The rounds are a little quicker,
and there's more of them.
Yeah, or in distilled, getting through kind of that first. I mean, distilled, it's right on the player aid, but I can go through that first. Let's go through all the, let's get the game going, and after we've purchased, maybe done a first purchase or maybe a second purchase. Okay, now I'm going to explain the full end, Now I'll explain in-game
Yeah.
story. Because at this point, other than distilling a spirit, you have like basically the core of the game down.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I think my biggest takeaway with teaching a game to any type of group of people is to have a plan and have it, kind of organized in your head so it's going to make sense. Mm-hmm. So you're not just jumping around or following them and not necessarily always following the rule book, because that isn't always the best way to teach the game. So. All
right. Well, my cup has run dry.
Mine is finally too.
All right. So our cups have run dry. Hopefully yours have as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if there's a favorite way that you use for teaching board games, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. I think it's helpful for everyone in the community to understand how to tackle this topic of teaching board games, because there's so many of us that are intimidated by it. And the only way that you're going to get better at it and know it is to do it and to learn new techniques and watch people that you think teach games well and start to incorporate some of those things that they do into your own style. But it's important to have your own style for teaching a board game. After all, when you're teaching, you're the host, and it's part of your responsibility, we feel, to make sure everybody not only understands the game, but is going to have a good time at the table. And until next Board Games and Coffee, drink up.
Hey there, it's Conesy. Thank you so much for watching. We put out videos weekly here at WiscoDice. Check out our channel for more great videos, and don't forget to subscribe. We also have more great content on our website at WiscoDice.com. Of course, we do this all for you, the viewers. So please like the video if you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.